Why do cruise ships have different flags and registration to the country it is homeported from? In this video, I'm going to explain why they flag and register ships in other places from where the ship sails from. Alright, let's get started with explaining why ships even bother with flagging or registering with any country in the first place. After all, ships are usually out at sea most of the time, so why bother? Going too technical, it's so whichever port the ship lands in knows which country the ship belongs to. Also, in the olden days, it also meant that you were not a pirate. So why are cruise ships flagged to different countries, rather than the one it's being homeported from? The answer is that there are more advantages to the cruise companies than disadvantages for the cruise lines to be foreign flagged. This also happens to be known as a flag of convenience. And if you're wondering, this is a common practice within the maritime industry, not just cruising. The cruise ships are flagged within a particular country, they still have to abide by that country's laws, even when it's out at sea. This is where the flag of convenience comes into it. The ships will be registered in a country that has the most convenient laws for that ship. Initial registration of ships comes in two versions, closed and open. Closed, which most countries use, means that the ship is usually owned or constructed in that particular country. Most, if not all cruise ships will not use this version. Instead, they will choose open registration, which means anyone can register the ship within that country, and the construction can happen in other countries. Before I get into the reasons it is done in this day and age, I'll explain the reason why companies began to foreign flag their cruise ships in the first place. In the 1920s, the US had prohibition laws. If you don't know what that means, basically it meant that the production, importation, or sale of alcoholic drinks was prohibited. Any ship that was flagged to the United States was unable to sell alcohol, regardless if it was international waters or not. This wasn't a problem for cruise ships that were foreign flagged. Since the ships were required to run by its own country's laws, they were able to sell alcohol on board. Cruise ships began to register their ships to Panama and were now selling alcohol on board. Today, finding alcohol on cruise ships isn't a problem. Today, cruise companies flag their ships in countries where the laws are most convenient for them. The laws that companies are looking for are employment, where they can hire more foreign workers from. Some of these countries include the Philippines, India, and Indonesia. The advantages for the ships in this regard are they are able to pay less for the workers depending on their job than they would in their home port, but the worker would still usually get a higher wage than what the worker would get in their own home country, where they don't pay or pay less taxes to their home country when in international waters, where they can pay less for insurance and maintenance for the ship. So essentially, money and profit are the two main reasons for this case. This can save a ship millions of dollars per year. Those are the two main reasons, but depending on the cruise line, they will take it further for what they can do on board their ships. This is the reason why different ships have different flags. The biggest one is weddings at sea. There are a few disadvantages for the cruise lines being foreign flagged, but obviously they have been outweighed by the advantages. These disadvantages include, if there is an emergency with the ships, they can be made to leave a country's waters without warning. This very rarely happens, such as the cruise ship shut down because of COVID in 2020. Certain laws about foreign-owned ships in countries such as the Passenger Vessel Services Act or PVSA in the US, where a ship has to visit a foreign port before it returns to the US. With these two disadvantages, they are easy to get around for the ships. In both cases, the ships will just go to another country if possible. A third disadvantage is if a ship is registered to a certain country. Let's take the US for example. US flagged ships are required to be serviced in the US. This wouldn't be a problem if the ship sailed out of the US, but if it's based in the other side of the world, that ship would have to sail back to the US, have it serviced, then return to where it was sailing, costing the ship time and money to do so. This also includes emergency maintenance, which if done in a foreign port, the company would be required to pay a 50% tax. This is why in the US alone, over 90% of passenger ships are foreign flagged, including all major cruise lines, the exception being mostly smaller ships. That's not to say all major cruise lines and big ships are foreign flagged. Now what happens if that ship's flag was no longer a convenience? The ship would simply re-register with another country. This has happened on some ships while sailing on the ocean and can be done as quick as 30 minutes. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And while you're at it and haven't done so already, press subscribe. Why not watch another one of our videos? And as always, thanks for watching.